Vito, you guys sing a lot of songs other than Little Star 2. What is your personal favorite that you guys recorded?
There were a couple. Everybody that heard the second record, Please Believe Me, thought that was better than The Little Star. And I wrote that myself, and I really liked the way that developed. As a writer, I liked it. I thought it would do bigger than it did, but I think that there was a problem with the late release on it. It was just released much later than Little Star, and we had probably hurt ourselves by staying out on the road too long. But while we were out on the road, Dion was with me when I wrote that. I was writing that on the bus, and he loved the sound of it. He liked the idea of it, and when he left the Belmonts, he literally started utilizing that style of singing, and he Run Around Sue and The Wanderer and all of those songs are pretty similar to our second record, Please Believe Me. And he is basically, in so many words or less, had mentioned the fact that that he was influenced by that by that style of singing. So it's a nice compliment. I'm very complimentary. He's a good friend, and and he's gone on to much greater heights with his career. And if we had a small part in that, well, I'm very pleased. I think mine would have probably been from the songs that we did like that. It would have been a song called Tiny Cloud. That one I liked, and Little Boy Blue. Those were my two favorites. We stayed pretty much close to the Little Star thing and the nursery rhyme thing. And actually, Little Boy Blue was supposedly the sequel to Little Star, even though it came out. That was our third record. Singing-wise, the one I really enjoyed most, or would have liked it to come out a little better in the mixing of it, which we had nothing to do with, unfortunately. But it was a song called Let My Prayers Be With You, which I adapted the melody from an old Catholic church hymn, and I wrote the lyrics, Let My Prayers Be With You, to that particular hymn. The hymn was an old a funeral mass or high mass from a Catholic church called Kyrie Eleison. It was a Latin hymn. But that would have been my favorite as a singer, and it was arranged by Don Costa, who was Frank Sinatra and Paul Anka's arranger.
And Vito, you mentioned that you guys toured with Dion. What other artists did you guys tour with back in the 50s and 60s?
Well, we had the great fortune of being around at the early stages of rock and roll. So we literally were on the road with other teenagers and other people in their very early 20s who had not yet become legends. Over the years, they've all become legendary. At least some of them have, and But we were on the ground floor with these guys. We toured with Buddy Holly. We toured with Chuck Berry. We toured with Paul Anka. We were on the same label with Paul Anka. We went on ABC Paramount with Paul Anka. And the Platters, the Drifters, the Coasters, pretty much everybody. I mean, if anybody had a record in the late 50s, early 60s, we worked with them extensively. The Everly Brothers, we did 10 days at the Brooklyn Fox with the Everly Brothers, one of the first jobs we had, and we had adjoining suites with them in the hotel in Brooklyn when we did it. And you get to know each other really, really well at that point. When you spend 30 days with Buddy Holly, when you spend 30 days on a bus, doing 30 states in 30 days, you get a chance to really start to know each other, and it was a great thing. Buddy, unfortunately, he was when our tour split up, he had continued to tour and did one more tour, but his success had reached a level where he then could afford to fly to the next job, and which unfortunately became his demise.
And that was almost 53 years ago, almost to the date. I was actually up at the Winter Dance Party this year, and that was quite something, the first time I'd ever been up there.
Yeah, that was February 3rd or 4th?
February 3rd, yep.
Yeah, the 3rd, yeah. And, we got that, we heard that thing come over the radio. It was devastating, and Dion actually was on that tour also. He chose not to fly on that plane with the other three, which out to be faithful for him, thank God. But yeah, the Cirque Ballroom, we had been contacted a few times to do that because there was a connection or a slight connection to, us and Buddy at the time, especially at the time of the incident. And but we've always been booked so far in advance that we were never available to do the concert at the Cirque Ballroom. And I would have loved to do it, but it's they're still doing it. Of course, you said you were just there. I don't know who was there this year, but they still do the shows there. They still run shows there.
You mentioned that you guys are still performing. How long have you been performing, or have you been performing pretty much since you guys graduated high school?
Well, I've been performing since I'm 13 years old, and I haven't stopped in 55 years, I think it is now. But the thing is that there was a period where the Elegants were not working because the Beatles had taken over, and that was the end of the music as we knew it. So what I did was I had formed a band in the 60s, and I worked pretty much in the 60s as a band similar to the Rascals and Paul Revere and the Raiders and those type of bands, and created this group called Bojest and the Legions, and I was out working with that band for pretty much throughout the 60s, and then there was a phone call to do a rock and roll. They called it a rock and roll revival. We never really called it Doo-Wop until the latter years, but it was we did a rock and roll revival. It was supposed to be only for one night. It was at the Academy of Music in Manhattan in 1970, and that once that night came, and pretty much the promoters saw that this was a successful comeback for that music. We have never been really out of work since that time, since 1970. Things have slowed down a little bit now because of the economy. We noticed that the Parks departments don't have the budgets for the outdoor concerts as much, so they've scaled down. A lot of the promoters now have put themselves in a position where they don't want to spend as much money. They use a lot of tribute bands and tribute groups, and also the age of the audiences. They're retired. Some, of course, are no longer with us. Some have moved into adult communities, or some places with warmer weather, and so we're finding that the music is starting to reach a point where it's winding itself down, but there's still plenty of work out there. There's still a lot of work out there, and if we're prepared to fly out to do these things, we could go where the audiences are. They're all sitting in 55 and over adult communities. We've done this place called the Villages outside of Ocala, Florida, a place called Lady Lake, Florida, which that adult community now it encompasses 3 area codes. That's how big this thing is. Three zones. It's also probably about 80,000 people in that place, and we have gone in there about 6 times. They have a theater that holds 800 people. They do 2 shows a night when they do have entertainment there on the weekend, and we've sold it out every night, every time, and that's 1,600 people. I mean, 55 years later, I don't think that has, I don't think that's too shabby. We just sang at the Wildwood Convention Center in Wildwood, New Jersey, and that's sold out for 3,600 people. It's amazing. It's amazing how everyone that grew up with this music still hangs on to this music. It's not that they moved into today's music or they are not interested in today's music, but the fact is that they never let go of the love of the music that they grew up with.
Is there anything that you would like to add at all?
No, I know that over the years there's been a very few acts that have crossed over into the market itself. Like when the Beatles were happening, the Four Seasons and the Beach Boys had the foresight to make subtle changes in their style of singing, and they were able to cross over. If I had to say, that I was probably in the position to do it and didn't take advantage of it, I would probably say that would be my biggest sorrow over the years, because it would have given me the opportunity to broaden the audiences that we were able to reach, And by doing so, I could have still kept a lot of that doo-wop beginnings into the music, and I think that I would have been able to educate so many more people with what the roots were all about. But it's gone into another level. Michael Jackson, when he was in his heyday, really Michael Jackson, if you looked at it, he had taken bits and pieces of the 50s artists and created that. I created his style of singing. He didn't just wake up one day and say, "This is who I'm going to be." He saw other people, and he took a little of each of those people and created his own type of singing. And just about everybody. There are artists out there that have taken Elvis Presley, pieces of Elvis Presley, and then they have gone on. The Beatles claim that they took Buddy Holly and Chuck Berry and they put them in a blender, and when they came out, they created the Beatles. So the influences are so great from the little beginnings, the humble beginnings that we had, and the pioneers of this music really have contributed a lot more than the public, really understands. But that would be the only thing. I would have liked to have been a little more of a dominant figure in the music industry, but it just hit us. The Beatles came out so close to when we were really starting to blossom that they changed the face of music and literally crushed the doo-wop market entirely. But that's the only thing that I would probably say that I would have loved to have seen happen.
Well, Vito, thank you very much for talking with me today. I really appreciated learning the history of the Elegants and where Little Star came from. That's Vito Picone from The Elegants. For other interviews that I have done, you can always check out Out of the Attic on Facebook. There's always links on there, and you can always check out Out of the Attic's YouTube page as well.